Hello everyone. This is Deepika Changani. I am an assistant professor at Kirit P. Mehta School of Law, NMIMS University. And I will be talking about law as a career, law as a field of career after 12th. So, first, I will be telling you why you should be thinking about law as a career after 12th. First and foremost thing, it is actually a most unconventional form of a career because mostly when you start with your preparation of taking up a career after 12th, most of the people start pouring up their suggestions saying that you can either take up science bio, you can either take up science maths, you can take up commerce, you can take up arts, but none of you tell you that there is a huge potential with law as a career. And the reason is that the spectrum of legal education has changed in the past 15 years at a huge level. You don't look at conventional colleges, the evening classes anymore. You look at national law schools, you look at prestigious private institutions, you look at so many legal education players being keen interested in formulating huge careers out of law. So first and foremost, I will be talking about few conventional careers in law which has undergone transformation over a huge amount of time. So the first and the foremost is litigation, or the advocates whom you see working hard in courts, whether it's a high court or Supreme Court or the district courts. Now, why this career has also undergone transformation? Because you will see that the people or the law graduates who are upcoming into this field are the people who have graduated with a very nuanced exposure from a lot of educational institutions. So you are not looking at the advocates in the most conventional manner at all. That is the first field which is very much known to people, which is very much known to any kid who is actually studying in 11th 12th and has no exposure to law. So you could find a very easy connect to that field. The second one is when you look at corporate giants, when you look at people working as associates in law firms. Now, this is a very monetized career in law, and it has also undergone substantial transformation. And how and what kind of an exposure the law colleges or the national law schools give you when you take up law as a career after 12th, I will be covering in a bit amount of time. The third one is the most unconventional form of a career which has taken up very recent form, and that is working in domain of law reforms. That means that with the Nirbhaya case which happened in 2012 and the subsequent amendments in law, all that work is actually taken up by huge think tanks who work on it, who think about how law should keep up with its pace in society and how it should work, where it should be able to work as a tool to deliver justice. So at that particular point of time, you're talking about a career in law with respect to law reforms. So most commonly form of law reforms is in respect to law commissions, but apart from that, you could also look at vertical horizons like Vidhi Legal Center working very, very effectively, and they are quite doing a hefty payment to the people who are working with them. So the reason why I'm talking about Vidhi Legal Center, or why we should be thinking about law as a career after 12th, is because Vidhi Legal Center and places which work for law reforms and which are monetized enough are not known to students, are not known to their parents who are thinking about whether their kid should take up law as a career or not. So, apart from these two conventional and the one unconventional form of the career opportunity you have when you take up law, there is one more which is talking about taking a defined position in public sector undertakings, where you actually take up your background of the legal education, the law degree, and then you give an entrance exam and then you take up that field. So that is also a very, very monetized career option. The reason why I'm talking about these four career options specifically at the start of my presentation is to make the kids aware that when people tell you about that, why you will be thinking about taking law, it's just about advocacy. It's not just about advocacy. Advocacy is not even one fourth of the career options which you have when you finish with the law college. So I think that is something which the students should be well aware about. So, in my next segment, I will be telling you that what is the positioning of the law colleges, how law colleges operate, what does a law school curriculum does to a student, and how it works, and how you thereby go forward in making a placement, or how you go forward and making a secure job in the career in the field of law. So, guys, what exactly happens is that once you have taken up or signed in for the common law admission test for the national law schools all over the country, you are basically entering a horizon of colleges which are specializing in law in a hierarchy. So at the topmost, you will see the national law schools. Then you will see prestigious private institutions which take up the CLAT score and work on the similar spectrum, on the similar curriculum as the national law schools only. So I will be focusing and I will be dissecting the field. I will be telling you what are the different specializations which happen, how they help a student to understand that what that student should be taking up in the future course, and how they should move ahead. So then so it's a 5-year integrated course. You won't see the 3-year course anymore. At least in the reputed colleges, you won't see that course running at all. You will see a 5-year integrated course with different bachelor degrees. There could be a BA LLB honors. There could be a BSc LLB honors. There could be a BCom LLB honors, and there could be a BBA LLB honors. So all those 4 specializations, all those 4 degrees have a very different spectrum. They have a very different connotation, because when you take up those courses, you are signing up for a certain kind of a multidisciplinary approach in law. It's a very conventional and a very orthodox observation that law can be read in isolation. It cannot be read in isolation, and that is very much clear to the law colleges today. And that's why you see an interdisciplinary approach which they follow in a very structured manner. So when you take up the BA LLB course, you are given subjects like sociology, political science, and history. When you take up the BBA LLB course, you are given up subjects like marketing and management, and that goes similarly in dimensionalizing the other 2 courses as well. So the reason why there is a specialization, or why in the initial 3 or the 4 years of the 5-degree course you are given a choice to work into those courses, is because there is a very huge relationship between each and every aspect of the curriculum. When you read political science, your background or your basics for constitutional law becomes stronger. When your basics for constitutional law becomes stronger, it becomes easier for you to become an advocate in High Court and in Supreme Court, because your litigation aspect related to writ filings and other things becomes stronger. So there is a step in lock-in connection between each and every aspect of a law school curriculum. Now, previously, when law school curriculums were framed, they were usually framed with the aspect of making a huge gap between theory and practice. But with the aspect of pressure points from law firms, from corporate giants, from judges, from senior advocates, from chambers, from law reform places, from NGOs, there has been a continuous competition between law schools and law colleges and law curriculums to make them impactful, to make them in consonance with the current and the contemporary requirements of market today. So you won't looking forward to any kind of a curriculum in law which is very abstract, which is very theory based. As a faculty, I can tell you that the office, that the management which actually runs the entire college, they also make sure that the curriculum is in sync with the market requirements today. So when they insert any clinical courses in the law school curriculum, they make sure that the basic courses of the degree, that means the BA, for example, the BA degree courses like the sociology and political science, should make a very strong connection with subjects like constitutional law and family law. And that goes similarly with BBA. So if you are reading subjects like management or marketing, then you will be having a very stronger base when you will be reading intellectual property rights. Now, this first 4 years are very important for a student to understand his or her potential, his or her skill set, as to where they can shine, they can work very, without any hurdles. And the reason is because the skill set which starts originally being created in the first year gets developed over the year of time. Now, this is a specialization which is based on degree, which is in the first 4 years, but as you move on to the fifth year, which is the final year, you look at diverse specifications based on law itself. So I will be telling you in a bit amount of time the first four specializations, which are the conventional specializations, and the one which has been coming up very recently, and the reason of that upcoming field. Okay, so the reason of giving you a brief introduction regarding the degree courses under law and how it is dimensionalized over time, and why law works as a very, very suitable career after 12th is because people have understood that law as a career has been equally monetizing, has been equally rewarding financially in comparison to other fields, and hence they are taking up law courses very seriously. You will see that there is a boom in law colleges, but apart from that, there is a continuous pressure on all the legal institutions to make sure that they are able to compete with each other in the market. So there is a rigorous, I would say, competition between the colleges as well, and which makes the law school curriculums more impactful and more in consonance with the contemporary needs today. So when a student has undertaken a law degree, so in the first 4 years, when the student has got a substantial amount of exposure on the interdisciplinary degree which he or she has taken, for example, whether it's a BA, BBA, BSc, or BCom. Apart from that, in the fifth year, the kid is exposed to the final exposure in a law school, which merges the market practice with the theory as studied in law schools. So you will have the four conventional specialization, which is the corporate law, intellectual property rights, constitutional law, and criminal law. Now, the diversification of the law school curriculum in respect to this is especially to make the student understand that in which fields they want to go in. Now, apart from this field, there is one more field which has come up because of the recent market scenarios which have developed. For example, when the Vijay Mallya case happened, when the PNB case happened, when the other willful defaulters case happened. So the law schools actually tapped into potentiality of another specialization, which is the financial regulations law. Yes, you have heard it right. It's the financial regulations law, which has come up to be the new form of specialization for students who think that whether it's corporate, IPR, criminal or constitutional law as one of the most conventional forms of specializations. Now, the fifth year specialization is nothing new. It has been a practice over time, but the financial regulations law is a very recent, I would say, it's a very, very recent addition to the law school curriculum. And the precise reason is that there is a bridging of gap between the theory and the practice. Now, you must be thinking that why I am focusing on this aspect of theory and practice so much is because initially there was a huge amount of gap between what was taught in law schools to what was practiced in theory, and Bar Council of India recognized that gap very effectively, and that's why they introduces clinical papers in the law school curriculum. But with the advent of time, with the aspect of teachers also being aware about this profiling because they are also law graduates, so what they have done nowadays is they have kind of inserted those practical elements in their theoretical dissemination of law. So when you look at these integrated courses, they help you very effectively in making you understand that what is your potential, what could be your exposure, what could be your experimentation, and how you can join the learnings in the law school to that of a market. Now, at this particular point of time, you must be thinking that what is the behavior of a market? How does what is the market in law operates? So if you look at the pay scales, I won't be talking about the pay scales, but I can tell you that monetizing wise, each and every field which I have talked about right now, whether it's the law firms, whether it's the advocacy and the senior advocacy, whether it's the NGOs, whether it's the the vertical horizons like the Vidhi Legal Center, and even when it is academics, all of them are financially very rewarding, and the kind of exposure, the kind of skill set and observations which are observed by a student make it easier for that student to stand independently in the market, even as a fresher. Now, the reason why I'm telling you is because most of the courses nowadays, for example, if you take medicine, if you want to establish yourself as a doctor today, it becomes very difficult until and unless you are done with the postgraduate course. But the postgraduate course in law today still stands as an academic requirement. When you are done with the 5-year rigorous course, you are in a position to be absorbed by these law firms, by these other work profile places, and you are fit for that job. Okay, so now the reason of giving you an idea about these specializations is to make you aware. So, for example, if you are interested in reading about Vijay Mallya case, then you are looking towards financial regulations law. If you are interested in brands, you are looking at intellectual property law. If you are looking at banking systems, if you are looking at companies and others, you are looking at corporate law. If you are looking at that how this public interest litigation functions and everything, you're looking at constitutional law. So there are common threads in our day-to-day lives which helps us understand and relate us with law, and which makes it easier for an 18 to 19-year-old student to make that choice even after 12th, right at the start of their careers. So now the reason of introducing you with the field of law and its current positioning, as well as the specializations the degree courses hold, is to give you an holistic, to give you an holistic view about how these courses operate. And there is one more thing which I haven't told you right now is the international exposure which the law schools or the law field gives you, because nowadays you won't see the laws which are just revolving around the territory of India. You will see cross-border disputes, you see cross-border laws coming into picture. For example, when we talk about the alternative dispute resolutions or the ADRs, you are looking towards international disputes, and that's why you see the international seat for arbitration in Mumbai. So this all things are also adding up to the entire circle of the career of to the career law. And the reason of making these specializations clear to you is because if you are already familiar with what's going to happen in a law school, what's going to happen after the law school, it will become easier for you to make that choice at the start of the career, or at the start of your of the process when you are trying to make a choice that whether I should take up law as a career after 12th or not. And the reason why I'm talking, why I am going forward with why I've done the entire presentation or the speech, whatever you wanted to say from a student perspective, because I have seen students in career fairs being completely confused about different and diverse options which are available to them. So now in the another 10 minutes which I have, I will be talking about the future scope of this field. So you might be thinking about what could be the future scope of this field. So I will give you a very, very basic reference to the current lockdown situation which is going on. Okay, so let's say if the current lockdown situation is already persisting, and the state thinks about certain checks and balances on certain state agencies, as well as all the participants which are responsible or which are crucial to flatten the curve. So they could do that by creating specific regulations and by regulations or even bylaws, and they can make it mandatory. Now, this is something which is done only and only by taking law as a tool. Okay, so apart from this, practically this was just a very, very substantive, a very, very basic version to tell you the scope. But I will tell you the future scope, that with the aspect of nuanced sources coming up to the picture, just as the artificial intelligence and others, there are already courses in pipeline. There are already courses which have come out with artificial intelligence and law, or what is its interconnection. The World Intellectual Property Organization is already working on testing legal requirements on artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence legal framework should be completely revamped, because the conventional legal framework cannot be applied. So the potentiality of law as a career as compared to other conventional fields is humongous. There is no stopping of this field at all, because it keeps on connecting with each and every aspect which gets created on its own. For example, whether it's technology, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's human nature, whether it's finances, everywhere you will see a connection with law. Even if you are talking about, theater artists, performing artists, and other things, you will see a connection of law to that. So I think the reason why the future scope of law will be unstoppable is because of its unique connection with nearly each and every facet of life. And because of this, you see that how it gets justified with the aspect of multidisciplinary approach of law being connected with the aspects of arts, with the aspect of commerce, with the aspects of management, with the aspects of science. So I think you if you are confused right now, if you are thinking about what I should be doing after 12th, I think you should be absolutely aware about what potential law hold as a career, what different options you have, and how each and every college gives you a very, very different, a very nuanced exposure in itself. And because of this ever emerging competition between colleges, ever emerging competition between people who are working in the fields and markets, the gap between the theory which is taught in law colleges and the practice has kind of merged. You won't see that gap anymore. And the reason why I'm telling you this, because when we as a faculties interact with the people who place students, they say that you can't make the subject very theoretical, you have to make it very practice oriented. And that's the difference, that when the entire aspect of taking a field, taking a career as law comes a full circle, because a student, when he or she passes out from 12th, makes that career option, after those 5 years they feel quite content with themselves, that they have done something substantial to their careers, and now they are, you know, welcoming the market with their both free hands. And hence it becomes a kind of a very content career with students nowadays. And that's why you see that right from the initial set of 10 national law schools, it has already jumped to 18 and 19. So I think my overall aspects of covering that what is the current scenario of law as a career, along with the specializations being multidisciplinary degrees, and the fifth year specializations, and the future scope of how the future scope of law is unstoppable, is something which will give you an overall holistic approach on whether one should take law as a career or not. I would like to end my presentation or my speech with just one thought, is that the reason why the future scope of law will be unstoppable is because recently I was just reading a bit about artificial intelligence in law, and people were trying to test the applicability of human resources law to it, right? So similarly, when you talk about other aspects which are already in pipeline, for example, what should be a legal framework to combat pandemic, so all those things are engulfed by law as a field. You might be looking towards doctors and nurses doing their best, who are indispensable right now at this particular point of time, but all of them can be safeguarded, all of them can be brought under a structure, they can be brought under a procedure which could be regulated, which could be beneficial to everyone, and it will be coming under law only. So I think with my presentation, I think you will be able to get an idea as to what I'm saying, and I'm open up to any questions if there are any. So I will be ending my presentations now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was
Yeah.
indeed insightful, and you covered a lot of things that the students might already wanted to ask. But there are a few questions that I already have.
Yeah.
There's one question from one of our team members. I am
Yeah.
told that you used to work for MNLU and you've studied at NLU Patiala. So if you can just touch upon your journey in the field of law. So if you can touch upon both these institutes, how is it working like? How was it studying like at NLU Patiala?
Okay, so I will first start that I have studied at Rajiv Gandhi National University of Law, and I've studied there from 2007 to 2012, and I hold a CGPA of 9. I think those 5 years were absolutely ballistic for me, because you are right now looking at a professional who could speak fluently for like another 1 hour or for 2 hours or for endlessly, but there was a shy girl who was 18 years old, who came up from a very humble background, and then she had that exposure where you could just speak endlessly with full of content. So I think my journey started with RGNL on a very, very, I would say, on a dicey note, because I wasn't sure that whether I will be able to make out my career in law. But with each passing day, the kind of exposure I got in RG Annual, I was able to realize my calling in the fourth year itself. I think very few people know at my law school, but in the fourth year itself, I started teaching. So the circle of life started with the aspect of me being taught by my teachers, and then I used to teach after those classes to pre-law students. So in the fourth year only, I kind of got an exposure that whether I should take academics or not. As per my credential, I was fully equipped to get a placement even in law firms as well, and I did got placement in law firm. I worked in a law firm for an year to utilize that practical exposure into my teaching. So once I was able to clear my law degree with flying colors in 2012, I moved to Mumbai, and then I worked in a law firm called as Agnihotri and Jha for 1 year, specializing in intellectual property rights. And then I became the founding batch of faculties who worked at MNLU Mumbai. I think the kind of exposure you get when you are a founding faculty for a national law school at a commercial place like Mumbai is humongous, because they give you a lot of responsibilities, because they are juggling between a lot of human resources, and they are trying to allocate financial responsibilities also between the center and the state. So I think the shift from being a law student in RGNUL to as a working professional, as a teacher associate in MNLU was starkly different. And I think the reason is because it's a sad state of affairs that when a student is actually taking up all kinds of exposure in law school, those exposures do not include working as an assistant professor in law, you know, because students do not consider academic as a very, very serious field. They feel that, if we are thinking about a career in law, we should be going or working as corporate giants, or we should be working as litigation experts and things like that. So I think the 360-degree turn of me working at MNLU exposed to me a lot of things, that, there are a lot of formal understandings, there are a lot of formal learnings, even in the field of teaching. You just can't go to the class and teach. It's impossible to do that. So I think my MNLU exposure helped me realize that how that misconception has to be gone out of someone's mind who think that they can just walk into the class and teach. I think it's absolutely impossible. So I think I will be summarizing now. So if you have any other question, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one more question that one of the parents had asked, that, how is it like to be an academician? How is that a career choice? I think you already touched upon that a little. There are questions coming in for the intake and the cutoff for CLAT. If you could.
Okay. I think that I will be able to tell you I won't be in a position to tell you the entire cutoff for CLAT, but I will be in a position to tell you that how it operates. So generally, when there is an easier paper, that analysis is actually done by market experts, that when the CLAT paper is out, the students have given the paper. And if the paper is easy, the cutoff nearly goes to 140 to 150 out of 200. But when the paper is tougher, it goes to the lesser side. That means it roughly goes around 200 to 130. And the initial top scorer people actually get the 18 national law schools, which are the ones which actually conduct the CLAT. But apart from that, most of the prestigious law colleges, including the one where I work, they take up the CLAT score to prepare their own list. So you cannot be thinking about joining a private college before the law schools are done with their first and the second listing. So, and for example, let's just take it for an example that you have got that kind of an analysis from a market guru that the paper is easier this time. So you have to understand that the person who will be able to take up National Law School of India University, Bangalore, will be absolutely cracking nearly 165 marks minimum. So that means if you're thinking about joining, let's say, NMIMS School of Law, which is also one of the good colleges, private colleges, they won't be taking you if you are less than 120. So that's what the rough estimate I'm telling. But because the cut score is so confidential, even the office staff doesn't share that cutoff score with us. But this is what I have been able to gather through my understanding of the admissions in colleges. Yeah.
Right. We have a lot of questions, but looking at the clock, I'll take just one.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Someone has asked about education abroad. So it says, if I want to work in the US or Europe in the long run, then if I study here and work for a few years, what options would I have? Or do you suggest that I have to pursue graduation abroad in law?
Okay, so I will be able to give this answer in a very, very precise manner. that even if you are, so there are two ways in working abroad. The one way of working is you taking up 5 to 6 years of work ex here, and then you are joining any of the Indian based offices of any international company. Okay, for example, in our times, Clifford Chance used to have an Indian office, so the students used to take up placements in that Indian office, and then they used to move to the US office. Okay, and then there are certain firms, especially in law, there are certain firms which have a kind of, I would say, cross border establishment approach. So, for example, when you talk about Allen and Overy, you will anyway see students from Indian origin who have passed out from national law schools was able to crack up the knot and were able to work there. Now, there is one more way where you could do is you do your graduation, and those credentials help you to take up an international course abroad, and you do that international course and then get absorbed in any of the offices. So both the ways, I think in law, I think the better option is you having some form of a work exposure, because that work exposure actually helps you in a better way, because when you are able to crack a knot with a course outside or abroad, it gives you more of a touch of an academician than a practitioner. So these are the two ways in which you can go forward and take up a course or take up a career in law abroad by making a bridge between your Indian degree and the international one.